Since long before we raised our hand and swore to defend this nation, we had to be tough. No matter what life threw at us, we were expected to hold our heads high and push through. So we did. It's a lesson we all learned growing up. When you're a kid and fall off your bike, you stand up, brush yourself off, and jump back on the saddle. When you train every day, but it still isn't enough, you still wake up and do it again. You begin to realize that being a human can be hard. Then you join the service and discover that life can get even harder. But no matter our rank, underneath our uniforms, we're all humans trying to get through something. Because things happen. Life happens. The unexpected, the unpredictable, the unbelievable. You never know when it's gonna hit you until it does. Some of us have lost brothers, sisters, and even children. Some of us have fought cancer, MS, and other diseases that have made us rediscover who we are. And some of us have thought about throwing in the towel so many times we lost count. But somehow, against all odds, we pushed through. As airmen and guardians, we look to our 4 pillars to give us strength. Mental strength, physical strength, social and spiritual strength. We use these pillars to climb out of whatever hole we're in. They enable us to lace up our boots each morning and move forward, even if it's just one step at a time. They're a reminder to reach out to those around us and to what's within us. Then it happens. That day, that moment, that second, things start to turn around. We trade in worry for wisdom, guilt for gratitude, fear for faith. We trade in retreat for resilience. Because things happen, life happens. The unexpected, the unpredictable, the unbelievable. Always remember that there's something within you that's greater than whatever is happening around you. And know that what you go through doesn't determine where you end up. Not even close.
Team, please stand for the arrival of the official party.
All right, carry on, please. If there's an empty seat next to you, go ahead and stay standing. So there's the folks that are standing right now have empty seats next to them. There's several ones way up front here, so you can get a front row seat, no extra cost. All right, well, welcome everybody. Another beautiful day here at Edwards Air Force Base, the center of the aerospace testing universe. If you want to know what is the latest and greatest of what is happening in aerospace, guess where you come? Right here. Secretary Kendall did that. Next slide, please. Oh, we got to get sound. All right, next slide. So Secretary Kendall was just out here at the beginning of last month. He was curious, what is the state of the art in artificial intelligence, machine learning as applied to flying aircraft. The state of the art is actually happening right here. So he came out to the test pod school, flew in the front seat of the X-62. Actually, I should say he rode in the front of the X-62 because the AI agent was flying the airplane. He was actually an active participant in the test. He was the one that had to activate the AI agent with the missile step button, and you could really see him perk up in the brief when he realized, wait a second, I got to roll, I got to push the button. When do I do that? But this is where it's happening. It's happening right here. He walked away from that, and it was fun to listen to him talk. He was very, very candid about great power competition. We're going to talk about that today. About where we're going, about the role that he sees for Air Force Materiel Command, which is really all about delivering that integrated capability to the warfighter. He was also, he realized where the state of things were with the AI agents. CCA, the Collaborative Combat Aircraft, that is one of the key technologies, key capabilities that we are going to need. And the agents that we are currently demonstrating here in the X-62 are going to port directly over into the two performers that we've just, we didn't down select, we just exercised options in the CCA program. And there are folks in the 411 Flight Test Squadron or in the Air Dominant CTF that are doing that right now. Next slide. He also spoke to the TPS students and was quite candid. You've heard General Alvin say that characterized the period that we're living through right now as a time of consequence. Secretary Kendall was very clear. He said, we are out of time. It is very real right now. That is what's driving the reoptimization of the Air Force. That is what is driving the focus on great power competition. And we'll spend a little bit of time about that, talking about that. Secretary Kendall really came of age, right when during the heat of the Cold War. So he graduated from West Point in the early 70s. He was an Army officer through that early period of the Cold War. We have I can see a number of the seasoned folks, we'll call them, that also came of age during that time period. I was in school all through the 80s. Go ahead and go to the next slide. We were here before. There was, when I was a kid, I distinctly remember in the early 80s, the persistent, pervasive feeling that war was inevitable. It was going to happen. The Soviets were just a massive, massive powerhouse. They outnumbered our army, outmanned our army, had far more nuclear warheads than we did, and it spilled over into everything. The Miracle on Ice. Who remembers the Miracle on Ice? The fact that the Cold War was, everything spilled over. And so this was a very real thing. And we successfully navigated the Cold War. I won't say that we won it. We avoided war. We avoided World War III. And we did come out, we didn't have to change our system. So in that sense, we won, but there should be no pride or hubris in that. What we should have is a kind of a collective gratitude that we didn't end the world as we know it. And the way that we did that, so go to the next slide. Here's about the late 70s is when for the first time ever, the Soviets had more nuclear warheads than we did. Those are cumulative totals. And then all through the 80s, and ever since then, ever since they surpassed us in the late 70s with number of warheads, they had that many more than us. We were not going to compete with the Soviets on numbers of warheads. Next slide. We were not going to compete with the Soviets on the size of the land forces, or the air forces for that matter. They just had a much bigger army, much bigger air force, more nuclear weapons than we had. That was not our competitive advantage. And note, that is all of NATO. Those blue bars is not just the U.S. Those are NATO forces as well, aligned on the western side against the Warsaw Pact. The vast majority of that, which were Soviet forces. 2-to-1 advantage to the Soviets. In some cases, with tanks, 3-to-1, 5-to-1 in some resources. That's what we faced. And we avoided the war despite that decisive disadvantage in numbers because of what we invested in. Next slide. So in the 1980s, realizing that we weren't going to compete on numbers, we invested in technology. Specifically, stealth, communications and navigation, precision navigation, and precision weapons. And a lot of that work, a lot of that development of that technology and that capability happened right here at Edwards Air Force Base. In fact, a number of the seasoned folks that I can make eye contact with you know who you are. You were part of that. That's when you were starting your career and you were developing those capabilities. That's when we were maturing GPS, bringing the Constellation. That's when the Lantern navigation system, which I flew with as a Block 40 F-16 guy in the late 90s when I finally entered the fighting forces. Obviously stealth. We just had the EWG change of command ceremony this morning. The BAF was built specifically for the B-1 program. And of course, the precision weapons. You know, we had dabbled with laser guided, we had dabbled with TV guided, but it was really in the 1980s where that really, the Paveway 2, the Paveway 3 systems came of their own. And it was really, really on show. There's lots of reasons that the Soviet Union fell apart. You know, it wasn't just this investment, but this is what prevented the Soviets from rolling through the Fulda Gap in Eastern Europe and rolling across. Was the fact that we had these capabilities that served as a deterrent. And then there's some other economic things that played into the ultimate dissolution of the Soviet Union in the late 80s. And then the investment in all of these capabilities and all of these technologies was on show. Next slide, please. In Desert Storm. This was just a phenomenal demonstration of air power. There is probably, it's hard to imagine another as lopsided of a victory as this was, relative to expectations. The initial expectations, again, kind of growing up, the training through the Cold War and all the war games that we had done, we expected tens of thousands of dead. We had stockpiled tens of thousands of body bags in the event that this did not go well, because again, we were in that Cold War mentality. As it turned out, those investments that had deterred World War III through the 80s proved decisive in Desert Storm. Next slide. And we kind of were able to operate with impunity. You know, we had these large bases. We had months and months during Desert Shield to actually, build up all these forces, move mountains of ordnance and munitions and fuel over to the desert before we actually finally kicked off the war. And we're dropping GBU-27s off of F-117s through elevator shafts in the communication towers to, essentially decapitated the command and control of the Iraqi system, which was modeled after the Soviet system. So that investment in technology that prevented World War III from happening when I was a kid, also, it worked. It worked because of the work that was done here. Now, there was somebody else that watched that, the whole world watched, but there was one country in particular that was just amazed at the dominance of the West, and that was the People's Republic of China. They went to school, they studied the nature of this victory, and what we see now in terms of anti-Axis area denial 30 years later is the direct consequence of them studying our way of war, our technological way of war in Desert Storm. Next slide. Actually, go back one. It's hard to imagine us massing force like that in the Pacific. I mean, you just look at that and you're like, that's just a target-rich environment. We're not going to be able to do that anymore. Next slide. So this is what the order of battle in the Pacific looks like right now. Kind of looks familiar. It feels like we played this game before 40 years ago as we were staring across the Iron Curtain at these massive numbers of Soviet forces. We are not going to be able to compete with the PLA, and it's the PLA, it's not the PRC. Again, we've mentioned it before. We have no beef, we have no conflict with the Chinese people. It is the autocratic leadership of the Chinese Communist Party that is actively resisting the international world, rules-based order that has existed since the end of World War II. Now, from Chairman Xi's standpoint, the victorious powers of the West established that international rules-based order, for the benefit of the victorious powers after World War II. I disagree. I think that a free and open market-based system is probably best for everybody involved. But if you happen to be in power and you want to stay in power, it's obvious why you might disagree with that. So regardless, the People's Republic of China, the PLA, People's Liberation Army, went to school, and their investment in anti-Axis area denial and their massive investment, their massive buildup, particularly in naval forces in the last decade, is because of where our strength was. So guess what? We are back to what we had to do in the 80s. We need to invest in the technology to deter World War III. And that's exactly what you're doing right now. Next slide. So this isn't about Taiwan. From Chairman Xi's standpoint, it is all about Taiwan. This is more, though, about the actual, what is the future of the world going to look like? In the Chinese Communist Party view, China is they are destined for ascendancy. Their economic growth, their military growth is just something that is inevitable after 6,000 years of history. They endured a lot of, as a nation, they endured a lot of invasions. That's why they had, built the wall, is, all the nomads and that came across Mongolia and invaded over the course of the years. So they built a wall to defend against that. And then, later on, the Western powers were imperialist powers through the 19th century, and they endured that. And so they finally feel that this is their time. They have lived through the ignominy of those kind of historical being taken advantage of, and now it's their time, and they see the U.S. As kind of in a long-term decline. And so at some point in time, they just see that they're going to be the sole remaining superpower in the world. Again, I disagree. And so this is more than just Taiwan, although Chairman Xi makes it very clear that he sees Taiwan as part of China. Now it turns out that the people who live in Taiwan disagree and have had elections that say as much. It's also important from a global economic standpoint. So TRMC produces, depending on the figures that you look at, 80 to 90% of the world's microchips. That's a very significant thing. War here would be very, very disruptive to the global economy for a number of reasons, not the least of which it might be the end of civilization as we know it. So that is what China has invested in. We are not going to compete on numbers. How are we going to compete? How are we going to deter the war that Chairman Xi's thinks is going to happen? War is not inevitable, but if there is a war, we better have the capability to defeat it. And it's a whole lot better to deter it in the first place. Next slide, please. And it's not just about the Pacific. It's really easy to look at that map and look at the anti-Axis area denial region and Taiwan, it's an island, it's a long way away. Sure, we get a bunch of microchips, but, so my iPhone doesn't work anymore for a while. Eventually, we'll have our own factories. Why do I care? We care because the PLA is actually bringing the fight to us. We have always enjoyed, the fact of geography about, where the United States is. We have enjoyed this kind of, fortress of being in North America and being able to fight that away game and never having to fight a war on our soil unless we actually do it to ourselves. But China is in our infrastructure. This is widely acknowledged. Typhoon, Volt Typhoon, I encourage you to read about The Economist. This week's edition of The Economist has a great article on Volt Typhoon. I actually want to read the opening statement that the Honorable Easterly, she is the director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. Her opening statement to Congress just a month ago. Chinese cyber actives are burrowing deep into our critical infrastructure to be ready to launch destructive cyber attacks in the event of a major crisis or conflict with the United States. Major conflict will endanger the American through disruption of gas pipelines, pollution of our water facilities, severing our telecommunications, crippling our transportation systems, all designed to incite chaos and panic across our country. We know they're there. We see the Chinese malware in the SCADA systems that control the electrical grid. 30% of Cisco routers have Chinese malware in them. We got some folks in the comm squadron? They can probably, yeah. Have you gotten kicked out yet? So we know they're there. And if those are the things that we've already known and we've already acknowledged, you can imagine just how pervasive it is beyond that. So this is not going to be an away, when the fight starts, this is not going to be an away fight. It's going to happen right here. And so as we talk about what is readiness, in an era of great power competition, readiness is actually, right here, right now. I see my very capable CE group commander here. We have a hard enough time keeping the lights on when the wind blows too hard. Let alone when the Chinese are in the systems and disrupting it for long term. Anybody remember the Colonial Pipeline shutdown 2 years ago? That was a Russian ransomware. Chaos up and down the East Coast. From Texas all the way up to New York, that pipeline served a number of stations and pretty much shut down the economy for a while. Now think about our airports, our radar control. So no aircraft, no airlines can fly because the radar system shut down. A blizzard in Denver causes massive disruptions that persist for sometimes a week. People are stranded. And just think of how inconvenient that is. It's all meant to, sap our will to fight. Again, we are going to prevent this war, and that's, the reason that we're, shining and highlighting this right now is because what you're doing right now here at Edwards Air Force Base is going to prevent this, because if they do this, it's actually an act of war. We know that. If the conflict already starts, though, well, free game. It's not against the law of armed conflict. Next slide. So we are not going to compete on numbers. China has 230 times the shipbuilding capacity that the United States does. We have 3 shipyards plus a kind of a ship depot in Hawaii. The Chinese have dozens of shipyards that are much larger. There's a Chinese shipyard. Again, we're not going to compete on numbers. But we didn't compete on numbers with the Soviets, and we were able to succeed because of our investment in those technology areas in the 80s. That's what we're doing right now. Next slide. That's exactly what the operational imperatives are. Imperatives are things that we have to do. And the unfortunate thing about this graphic is that it looks like these are stovepipes, that these are silos. They're not. Actually, what you are doing right now is you are creating an integrated capability that stitches all these things together. So think about a long-range kill chain. So, moving, in the future, there may be a satellite that does moving target indication from space on the space order of battle. And it relays that down to a network. And we have an advanced battle management system with some AI and machine learning that helps do the targeting solution problem. That gets handed off to a 5th-gen fighter who then relays something to a combat collaborative aircraft that's flying 200 miles in front, carrying some missiles. It shoots a long-range air-to-air missile that nobody can see on their radar, but we know that there's a point where it needs to go, and it gets an in-flight target update. That's all of these capabilities stitched together. That is what, when Secretary Kendall and the Case for Change talks about integrated capability, and the reason that the Air Force is standing up an integrated capability command, and specifically Air Force Materiel Command is standing up an integrated development office, an IDO, And they're coming here next month to Edwards because they want to learn about how we will be doing integrated test. That's what it's all about. It's about putting this all together so that we have a capability to deter the next war. Next slide. Wise words at the start of the Cold War. We don't want to fight China. But if China starts a fight, game's on. But it'd be a whole lot better to prevent that in the first place. And this is deeply personal to me. Next slide, please. That's a new second lieutenant in the Air Force. That's Second Lieutenant Wickert, raising her hand to support and defend the Constitution of the United States in front of the USS Constitution, by the way, 2.5 weeks ago. This is personal. What we are doing, the capability that we are developing, the integrated capability that we are developing, is what is going to keep World War III from happening so that Charlotte Wickert, Second Lieutenant Wickert, is safe and can have a long and healthy, prosperous career in our Air Force. Next slide. So the case for change, if you haven't seen the document, it's readily available. Our senior leaders are laser focused on this. Corona is next week, and they are making the final decisions about the structure, the future structure of the Air Force. We are calling it a re-optimization, and it's all about being ready to fight. Secretary Kendall, when he was on this stage a year ago, in June, in fact, a year ago, almost to the day, he was here. One of the questions that he asked when he met with General Higer was, are you organized for great power competition? So it was clear that even before we launched the GPC, that he was already thinking about it. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of our combat wings are the way that we are structured, they can't get up and go and leave behind something that is able to do that base defense against those cyber attacks that we know are coming. And so the Air Force is likely, again, we expect decisions out of Corona next week, to sever combat wings, deployable combat wings, from the air base wings. Because air base wings are going to have to run and function on their own. The 412th Test Wing is considered an institutional wing. Again, no decisions have been made yet. We expect that our mission as we know it is not going to change. We are actually doing our combat mission right now. And that's not going to change. What will change when the war starts is that we got to keep the lights on so that we can continue to deliver and develop and test integrated capability. So the projecting power, that's all about the structure. How do we create deployable combat units, units of action that can get up and go to where the fight needs to be? And how do we defend? That's the projecting power part. The key piece of our mission is what we've highlighted here. That's what you guys are doing every day here at Edwards Air Force Base. If you want to know what the Air Force of 2027 looks like, it's the one that's flying over Edwards Air Force Base today. That is developing integrated capability. AFMC is probably the most significant MAGCOM that's changing, besides the fact that there's a new MAGCOM that's likely to be stood up if Congress approves it, the Integrated Capabilities Command. AFMC, half of AFMC is changing its structure as well. So LCMC, the Life Cycle Management Center, becomes the Air Dominance Center and the Information Dominance Center. And then the Nuke Weapons Center becomes the Nuke Systems Center. All of those are 3-star commands. The Test Center, AFRL, IMSC, those remain unchanged because our mission is, we're already doing our combat mission right now. So that's developing integrated capability. The other real big focus with great power competition is about being ready to fight. I bet all of the commanders, when they went through the command course, I remember when I went through the command course last year, they were very clear. So General Brown was still the chief. When he came, he said, your mission as a wing commander is to go back and get your wing ready for war, because it is right around the corner. Again, being ready to fight is probably the best deterrent because it changes the calculus of chairman-chief. And so to talk a little bit more about what do we mean and how do we generate readiness, my partner in command, Chief Stolfus, you have the floor.
Is this thing on? Can you guys hear me? All right. Hey, real quick, I want to start off by reading something from our current Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Dave Flossie. It's titled, "What Mission Ready Airman Means for You." I'm going to read a couple notes from him. Becoming mission ready may also require a culture shift. He talks about culture, right off the bat. He talks about the importance of culture. All right? One that makes airmen feel the sense of purpose that comes from being a valued member of the team. So I asked the leadership teams out there, is part of readiness making your team members feel like they're a valued member of your team? You don't have to answer that, I already know. Right? These are the things that our leaders at the highest levels in the DoD are thinking about. There's a culture shift coming when it comes to readiness. And when I talked to Chief Master Sergeant Flossie a couple months ago at Keystone, he said, "Stoltz, this is not the conflict that me and you grew up in. So your definition of readiness that you've known for the last 24 years, you might need to rethink that." And I thought a lot about that in the last couple months. Some of the other things he goes on to say is, it is that sense of purpose that motivates performance. If you feel like you're a valued member of a team and you have purpose, it drives performance. So think about that when you're walking around your units and you're talking to your teammates. Ready forces stem from quality of life. What is one of the boss's priorities? Quality of life. And we really need you guys to help us with that. If you see something, say something, please. And I hear you about the cold water in the gym, right? I took a cold shower the other morning, right? But it really made me appreciate the warm one I took that evening when I got home. That's one way of looking at it, right? But I will tell you that it takes a little bit of being uncomfortable to be ready, right? And I remind myself that all the time. All right, he finishes with mission-ready airmen are empowered airmen, capable, that understand mission command, and it's built from trusted teams. Is there trust in your teams? I'll offer that as a question too. I got all kinds of questions for you guys. True trust, right? Step away from that mic for a second, come out here. How do you build trust? By doing what you say you're going to do, right? I've talked about that to an extent here when I go to talk to ALS, when I talk to NCOA, when I talk to senior NCOs across the base. I'm not going to trust you if you don't do what you say. Is trust one of the keystones of readiness? I don't see any north-south. I'm not as eloquent with my words as the boss is, right? So turn off your iPhones if you're recording this, because I'm about to get real with you real quick, because this is very, very important. So if you're sleeping, please wake up. Trust is the foundational keystone in every important relationship you'll ever have. And if you stand up here and talk to me about readiness, or if I stand up here and talk to you about readiness and you don't trust me, why am I listening then? Right? The boss just showed you some doom and gloom stuff. But to me, it's not doom and gloom, it's inspirational. You know why? Because we have airmen like Boomer Hearn out there in LRS getting it done. I trust Boomer Hearn. You know why? Because he showed me I can trust him. Right? Yeah, I know this team pretty well. I've been around a little bit, and I'm getting out and I'm meeting people. We have airmen like Airman Feliz in the FSS. Right? I can't think of an individual who's more ready to go to war tomorrow than Airman Feliz. And you know why? Because his leadership trusts him and he trusts them. Trust is the cornerstone. And it's vitally important. Do your teammates trust you? Ask yourself that. Like I said, I'm going to get real with you here for a minute because it matters. You need to be asking yourself tough questions. So I'm going to ask you one right off the bat. Where's Senior Couch at? She in here? All right, whose permission do you need to be ready, Senior? Nobody. You don't need anybody's permission to be ready. That's your decision. What's your definition of readiness? Huh? Anybody? Let me tell you what my friend Webster said it is. Webster says it's a state of being fully prepared for something. Are we fully prepared for what you just saw? Are we? Man, I think about that a lot. I've got 11 deployments to the Middle East, not Al-Udeid. Not saying there's anything wrong with Al-Udeid. I actually like that place. It was awesome. But the places I went to, there was seldom a time when I was fully prepared. But what I lacked, my teammates had. I talk about team a lot because it matters to readiness. So as a leader in this organization, when you guys first came in, there was a video playing, and it was about resiliency. And I don't know if you caught it, but it's a PACE video from 2020, 2022. Go look it up. It's a really good video. Miss Becca's wanted to play it before, and I thought it was a great video. It added to what we're talking about here today. And in that video, it talked about the importance of commanders, senior NCOs, helping agencies when it comes to resiliency. And is resiliency another keystone of readiness? Yeah, a little north-south here. Yes, it is. Resiliency. How do you build resiliency? That's a question. You guys can answer it? I'll answer it for you. You build it by doing it. There's a saying out there, you got to go through it to get through it. The one thing I found throughout my 26 years in the military was I don't always build resiliency from a CBT or a burger burn. Not saying don't do your CBTs. Not saying burger burns aren't important. My point is, sometimes you got to go through it to get through it. But I will tell you, going through it alone is hard. That's why you do it as a team, right? If you are not understanding this message that readiness is important to the future freedom of the United States of America, go read Dave Flossie's message that he just sent out. Right? So we talked about trust. We talked a little bit about resiliency. And I hit on teams a couple times. I want to talk about a couple A's that mean a lot to me when it comes to readiness. Accountability. There's two types of accountability that I think a lot about. I think about personal accountability, the mirror check, looking in the mirror. Am I ready? Stop lying to yourself. Because Webster's definition is fully prepared. I will never, ever, ever be fully prepared for what I just saw. But I know I have teammates that I trust that are going to help me get there. The more truth we tell each other, the better we become. Let me give you a quick vignette of what I saw when I was a first sergeant that made me question our readiness and our capability to trust our teammates. I used to go watch, and you guys know I'm a PT guy, right? It means something to me. It's something I value. It's something that builds resiliency, and it's something that keeps me ready. And I was watching his PT test, and as this young trooper comes across the line at 16 minutes and 45 seconds, the senior NCO is there at the end, and he's like, "Great job. You killed it. You killed it." What message did that send to that young A1C that day on the track? What did it send? That not meeting the standard is okay. You guys don't want me to start talking about standards, especially if we're recording this. Oh, where you at, Chief? Oh, I know Chief Tab cares about standards. Hey, Chief, whose permission do you need to have your defenders ready to defend this base and protect our team? Not a soul. Not a soul. You don't need my permission. You don't need the boss's permission to be ready. That's your job. And you know who relies on you to do that? The teammate to your right and your left. That's who relies on you to do that. That was a powerful slide he showed his daughter coming to the United States Air Force. You know what that tells me? That he trusts you. That he trusts each and every one of you. Because this is the family that she's joining. Think about that for a little bit. Accountability. Who's your accountability partner? Right? What about team accountability? What are we doing in our units to hold each other accountable? I will tell you that I have talked to senior NCOs that have a hard time correcting something with an airman that they see that they know is wrong because they're scared of being a toxic leader. I told you I was going to get real with you. Because anything short of that would short you guys on what you deserve as my teammates. Why is that? Why did that individual walk by that individual and not correct him? Is that being a good teammate? I don't think so. Toxic leadership, huh? Holding standards. Is that where we're at? When somebody holds a standard, they're a toxic leader, I would call them a teammate. Because the best lessons I learned, the ones that were the most valuable to me, were the ones that kicked me in the teeth when I was a young trooper and thought I had it right. You don't build championship teams by telling somebody or a team they're great when they didn't even meet the standard. You don't. If that's news to you, we're a little bit behind where I thought we were. And I told myself I wasn't going to preach up here today. This is a positive message. I promise you it is. Oh! And a lot of my teammates out there, just like that one right there, understand why this is important. We're all saying the same thing and we ain't doing nothing about it. I want to take our Air Force back, and I want to ensure that Second Lieutenant Wickert has the security and the family that she needs to be successful in the United States Air Force. How about that? Oh, oh. I made a promise to the senior NCOs a couple months ago as me and Colonel Wickert had a senior NCO called Go Lead, I Got Your Back. I haven't changed my mind on that. Go Lead, I Got Your Back. Do it the right way. You have teammates around you, right? I want to talk about a couple of things, and I'll get off the stage. I know I'm going long here. I want to talk about one of the things that I think the Air Force got really right when it comes to readiness, and that's the CAF pillars. Who knows what the CAF pillars are? Comprehensive Airman Fitness? What are they? Give me one. Shout it out. Spiritual readiness. Physical readiness. Here, what's the last word I'm saying here? Readiness. Emotional? How about social? Social. Why is it important to have social readiness?
Can't do it by yourself.
Team. Together, everyone achieves more. I can do this all day. Right? It's about our team. So for all you mathletes out there, I'm going to throw this is off script a little bit. I'm a very strategically simplistic guy. I don't know anything about math, tell you the truth. But I have ChatGPT 4.0 that knows a lot about math. And the other day I asked it a question. I said, when on earth has me plus me plus me plus me ever equaled us? It hasn't. This is about us. This is about the future freedom of the United States of America. And if you don't think what you're doing each and every day is important, maybe you need to rewatch this slideshow. History will repeat itself no matter how you feel about it. We just need to make sure we're on the right side of history. And that's going to depend on each and every one of your accountability for yourself, your teammates, and making sure you're ready. Make sure you're ready. Make sure your teammates ready. And make sure we get up, get out there, and get after it each and every day, okay? I've got a side note before we get off the stage. Take readiness serious. And I promise you we'll be just fine. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chief. Great words as always. So I want to show you an example of readiness that we just did this week. Or last week. What day is it? I guess it was last week. I got it. So this is, we are going to define what readiness is for the 412 Test Wing. And this is a good example. This is something that exercised across the spectrum. So, the CDC had to think about, well, what would we have to do with 24-hour ops? LRS had to think about getting flatbeds, and CE had to get cranes, and this was impressive. We learned things, but that's exactly what we're going to do. Next. This is also readiness. The Chief Stoltz can do like 85 push-ups in a minute. It was incredibly impressive when he and I went.
Leading slide, I did not get 100%. I got some work to do. I got a 99.5, okay? So I got a lot of work to do.
Next slide. All right, so we published our strategic plan a couple months ago. If you don't have a copy of this, we'll make sure that you get a copy. We have a number of lines of effort. We're going to start rolling out Commander's initiatives. But to remind you, our three priorities are quality of life, data and digital transformation, and finally telling our story. I am actually, as Chief said, this is not a downer. It is a scary world, but I am extremely optimistic. In fact, every time I see the B-21 fly, I am that much more optimistic that we are going to prevent that war because of what we're doing, because of what you are doing. And our job, Chief Stoltz and I's job, is to actually take care of you so that you can go take care of that mission about preventing the next war. And so we're going to just go through a couple things. Next slide. Here's some things on quality of life that we have achieved. Next. The Edwards Air Force Base, first in the DoD, the apartment complex is approved. We will be doing groundbreaking probably August, maybe September, and the first occupants will be able to move in the following October to support the Class 26 Alpha TPS class that shows up. So this is a major first. We heard you. Housing is a persistent challenge. Almost 300 units is going to help with housing here at Edwards Air Force Base. Next slide. How about $24 million next year for dorm renovation and CDC repair?
Let's go.
Great work by our CE group. $24 million is more than we had in all three prior fiscal years combined. So the CE group did some phenomenal work doing this. That's quality of life. Next. We heard you about the schools too. So we got something for everybody here. This is, I think Miss Balkenbush is probably on her way to Switzerland right now. So the school's closed during the summer. PCS, military families, guess what? You can take a virtual tour of your school now before you show up. You can meet your teacher through a video. So brilliant idea and a really neat resource for our military families. Next slide. I'll tell you what, our FSS knocks it out of the park. So we hear you about housing, we hear you about schools, we hear you about, geez, I really wish there was something to do. Guess what? There isn't. Every single week there's at least one thing to do put on by our services squadron. The FSS is just absolutely phenomenal. Maybe you're not into all those things, but I bet there's going to be something that you'd like doing. So great work. Next slide. So that was quality of life. Real quickly on just some of the cool stuff that's happening with AI and data and digital transformation. Next slide. So we have an app store. If you go to the next slide, that's what it actually looks like. There's over 50 different apps. If there is something that you do that requires, entering information into one database and you have to go to another place and that's no longer on that system and you're like, this should be seamless, I shouldn't have to manually put this into, guess what? There's probably an app for that. If there's something that you're like, there should be an app for this repetitive type of thing that I do or for this, ability to get information in someplace, guess what? We are going to have an app for suggesting the design of an app. We have developers that actually create these things in-house. And you can go to the App Store and you can download it. So, we are now a quarter century into the 21st century, and we're no longer crawling. We're actually kind of standing up and walking and just getting ready to run through this digital transformation. Next slide. This is also pretty cool. So we opened up with artificial intelligence flying a fighter. We also have a team of just really cool engineers, if that's not oxymoronic, saying cool engineers. I'm a geek. I can geek out with the best of the engineers. So we have a test hazard analysis using the Gladstone AI. We have a THA AI, Gen AI, for developing test hazard analysis cards, just as a first draft. Here is also, you can see it, this is an AI tool. You put in a measure of performance, and it will generate test cards for you. And so, again, a great efficiency time savers, because, again, we need you to spend the time on the things that matter, developing that integrated capability, so that we can prevent that next war. Next slide. And then finally, telling our story. Next, I got to tell you, our PA team just does. It's a cool story to tell because there's always so much great stuff going on here. But this is neat. Next, one of the highlights of my week, it usually comes out towards the end of the week, is the Why We Serve series. This has been extremely fun to kind of just see all the different pieces across the test wing and your part and how you're contributing to that overall mission. Because it really does, it does take a village, and we are all part of that. And so this is a lot of fun. If you have a good story, let your supervisor know. We are always looking for good, compelling stories to tell. And again, hats off to our PA team for helping tell our story. There's our audience is, again, so I learn a lot from this. We can actually learn a lot about, what does it take to make the test wing, make Edwards Air Force Base operate. So we got that internal audience. We have our external stakeholders. We got the PEOs, we got the program offices that see, hey, we're using AI, we're being very efficient, we're doing all the things that we can do. There's also that external audience, the American taxpayers who we're helping defend. And there's a very, very important external stakeholder as well. We know the Chinese are watching us. And I want Chairman Xi to know that the 420th Flight Test Squadron is making big strides on testing and expanding the envelope of the B-21, because that is going to prevent the next war. Next slide. So as the summer PCS season, there's always folks that we have to say goodbye to, folks that we get to welcome as well. It is, I'm looking at them right here. It is, so after 39 years of service, Colonel Archie Manning, please stand up, is retiring. Archie, thank you for your service and for what you gave your country. Next slide. All right. It wouldn't be a commander's call. Do I have to say it? The speed limit is a limit. Look, we got kids that call this home, that don't always have the SA that we do. Don't speed, all right? If you speed in a school zone, guess what? You're going to lose your driving privileges here on base. There is absolutely no reason. Almost 200 people. Now, some of those might be over on Mercury Boulevard, people taking the shortcut over to Vegas, so they're not you. And I'm sure nobody in here is speeding. But look, drive the speed limit. All right, next. All right. One more admonition. This is likely going to be a contentious election season. One of the great things about this country is the fact that we can have a debate. Good luck if you are a a subject in the People's Republic of China, a citizen, stating that you disagree with Chairman Xi and his policy, you will find yourself in a work camp, in a re-education camp. We have that freedom to do that. But look, this is it is extremely important that we be respectful, and it's even more important that for military organizations that we are apolitical. The military is aside from politics. That is absolutely essential. There's nothing more than Chairman Xi would like than to see us kind of tear ourselves apart during the election season. So, in the work center, let's observe that apolitical nature and then encourage, be part of that agent of change that keeps it at a very respectful thing. It's okay to disagree. We can disagree without being disagreeable. Next. And go ahead and build for me. So our mission is we are testing and evaluating that integrated capability. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you are. Certainly the test pilot flying the test points, the test engineer in the control room is very much doing that. But go ahead and go to the next slide for me. If you're a defender at the gate, this is what you're keeping safe. If you're a dirt boy, pouring concrete so that the B-21 can take off to prevent the next war, this is what you're doing. If you work in the CDC, you are taking care of somebody's child so that they can be focused on the next test point so that we have the B-21 and so that we prevent the next war. Every single person here has an absolutely critical role, and I want to thank you for what you're doing. We are going to get through this. I am absolutely convinced. We did it before. The investments that we made in the 1980s, World War III didn't happen, and we're going to get there again. But we're going to get there because of what we're doing here. Go ahead and build. We have exactly, we started 4 minutes late, so we have exactly 6 minutes for questions. There's the line to text in your questions, and I think we have, in the wings, we have some that have already come in. All right, is this one for me? You got one for Chief?
Nope. Yeah, give the long one to the boss, because I trade.
All right. All right, with the new, I best, maybe, we'll see what it says. With the news of the B-21 radar beginning its testing here at Edwards Air Force Base, telling our story, has there been a noticeable shift in military operations from Russia, China, and or North Korea as far as a response to the B-21? Unknown. We certainly know. There's no reason that they wouldn't be, be paying as close of attention as they could. The B-21 is going to be an incredible capability, but nothing measurable that I'm aware of from any of those countries. Great question. We know they're watching, and I kind of want that. Deterrence no good if they don't know that you have it. Chief, you got one?
All right, some transparency here. This is not the first time I've seen this question, so whoever sent it, I haven't forgot about it. But with Fort Bliss authorizing the boonie hat for wear, is there any chance we can get them authorized for use here? So I'm not going to make that call here on the stage because it's not my call to make. But absolutely, if you guys have questions like that, if you guys have things that will enhance your quality of life, these are the questions we need to get routed up to our level. And I know I've been asked this question before. We put it in the hopper to talk about. But that is absolutely something we will talk about with the group commanders, the first sergeants, the chiefs, and the leadership on this installation. Because to tell you the truth, it's more our installation than it is me and General Select Wickert's installation. It's our installation. So for us to make a call without having a conversation with our teammates here would absolutely not be the right call. But I absolutely will present this at the next super small group that we have for discussion, and we'll get back an answer to you, because I know it is hot out there, right? I've been out there. During the mayor, I walked on the flight line. Yes, I was out there. It's important to be out where your teammates are at. And it was pretty warm out there that day, and I know they're authorized at Fort Bliss now. They got authorized down there. But I wouldn't trade going to Edwards, staying at Edwards for a boonie hat. I can tell you that, man. I'm not moving to Fort Bliss to wear a boonie hat. But yeah, we'll get that question answered with our super small group, and we'll get back to you. Thanks for asking.
All right, we'll do one more real time. All the questions that you texted in, we will get answered. So we've got the one of the things I didn't mention on the tower. A great, again, another highlight of my week when the tower comes out. We will answer all the questions that we don't get to today. Is there anything in place for BAH to match locality pay of civilians? Great question. So I will say, Chief is very involved in the RICI, the Remote and Isolated CONUS Installations, Caucus, Convention, Alliance, Conference. So Edwards Air Force Base is the poster child of a RICI base, a Remote and Isolated CONUS installation. RICI, Remote and Isolated, is a topic at Corona next week. There are a number of provisions. I'm not tracking that BAH was one of them, but it's certainly a good question. And something we are gaining traction on a lot of things, on a lot of relief in that quality of life vein. So keep this text line will stay open. You can keep the questions coming in. We'll make sure that we address all the questions, probably through the tower. Unless it requires a longer response, and then we'll probably do an essay or something like that. But I want to say thank you for what you do. It is extremely and incredibly important. The fact that we are delivering, we are accelerating, and we are delivering integrated capability to the warfighter is what is going to keep World War III from happening, and what is going to ensure the global peace and prosperity that we have all enjoyed since the end of World War II. So thank you for what you're doing. It's extremely important. And have a fantastic Juneteenth tomorrow, Family Day on Friday. We are back here, right back at it, because we've got integrated capability to test. Thank you. Carry on, please, and thank you.